My question today, though, is how do we do right speech and deal with conflict and not be doormats? What's a good tool to help us deal with conflict while adhering to the idea of right speech? First, let me tell you a story of one of the few times when I think I got this right. And this was years ago. So my most up-to-date example when I really feel like I nailed this particular approach. I was a new teacher. That's how long ago this was. And I was in a classroom teaching a class of, 14-year-olds, something like that. And a more senior teacher walked in and basically told me off in front of the students. And I was so embarrassed. I was mortified. I can't even remember what it was that she said, but she was a way more experienced, better, obviously, teacher than me and more senior in the school. And all the students stopped what they were doing and watched as she basically tore a strip off me, right? I was furious like this. And when I get angry, what I tend to do is I tend to bottle it up and let the person get away with it. Not because I'm afraid of conflict so much as I'm afraid of how I might act on my anger. I'm so afraid of my own anger, what I might say, that I end up doing the exact opposite and becoming a doormat as a result. So I guess a bit of a hedgehog. But on this case, I thought I can't. I used a method called nonviolent communication, which I know some of you will have heard of. And there's a whole book on it. But here's one of the key things that I have found useful over 20 years or more since I first read the book Nonviolent Communication. And that's that we are responsible for our own feelings, right? That's really important. We are responsible for our feelings. They are responsible for their actions. And separating those two things, my feelings, the other person's actions, in the way you communicate the problem to the other person is so important in not bringing judgment into your language when you approach that person. What I did was I said, you came into my classroom earlier. When you came in and said, whatever it was she said, I felt embarrassed and I felt like I had less confidence in front of the class. Now notice, the way I separated the things out, when you did this, I felt this. What I didn't say was, when you did this, it made me feel. If you think of like if you're carrying a cup of coffee and somebody barges into you and you spill coffee, the coffee is yours in your cup. Like if you'd had an empty cup, nothing would have spilt out and you wouldn't have been angry, right? You were angry because there was hot coffee in the cup. If they'd nudged you and it was empty, you'd be like, haha, never mind. So what's in your cup is your responsibility. And that's what I did. I said, when you did this, I felt this. I'm responsible for that feeling. Then the next thing I did was I made a request. I said, if you need to bring something up with me again, it would be great if you did that privately and not in front of the students, especially as I'm a new teacher and my confidence isn't great yet in front of students. Bit of vulnerability, a clear request, right? And which that person then respected and honored and never did that again. Was slightly surprised and taken aback by what I did because they were expecting, I think, me to either say nothing or come all guns blazing. And people know what to do when you come at them with like angry because they just bring anger back, right? They get defensive, which they have every right to do because you're judging them and therefore you're putting yourself over them. By not judging them, but also acknowledging what they did, you are not going above or below. You're just adult to adult with that other person. And that's nonviolent communication or compassionate communication. Communication that is compassionate to ourselves and to the person whose behavior has led to us feeling hurt. It can feel slightly clunky, this language, but I promise you it is worth it. And the story it reminds me of is from the Tao, from Zhuangzi. And it is the story of somebody who is on a little boat and another boat is coming towards him. And he shouts, "Turn your boat, you're going to crash into me." And the boat just keeps coming. And he says again, "Turn your boat." And the boat keeps coming. And eventually the boat crashes into him and he gets really angry and he shouts. And then he notices, actually, there's nobody in the other boat. It's an empty boat. And immediately the anger subsides. There is no anger left in him because it's an empty boat. Who is he to be angry with now? His boat still got banged into. He has still experienced the same experience, right? But his mind has changed because there's no one in the boat. So to treat other people as empty boats, to say, look, their intentions, I don't know. Or I'm not inside their head, so I cannot know that they meant to cause me harm. But also to treat ourselves as empty boats, to refuse to allow ourselves to be riled and provoked. And so that's the Taoists, but the Stoics as well. They were on this. Like this is wisdom goes back thousands of years, right? So a quote for you from Epictetus: be assured that it is your own opinion that provokes you. Be assured that it is your own opinion that provokes you. Not the other person, but your own opinion. So we can use that as a kind of right speech within the Eightfold Path. The Buddhist principles which work whether you are people of any faith, all faiths, or good faith, whether you believe in any gods or not. Actually, the Eightfold Path is a really useful set of virtues for us to use as we consider how we become better and freer people and more compassionate people. I did tell you I would tell you where I am. I'm in a place called Brixham in Devon, and it's stunning. I'm here on holiday for a week, so a great place to start this. And I've been in the sea every day, several times a day, and I might go in there now just before the sun sets too. It's gorgeous here.